You're not gonna believe this, but I'm about to share the craziest thing that ever happened to me, how my wife pulled the rug out from under me at our college reunion. And no, I didn't catch her because she messed up or had a guilty conscience. The truth came out thanks to someone else. And once I started putting the pieces together, I realized it was way worse than I could have ever expected. This wasn't just a one-time slip or some careless decision. It was a full-blown pattern, like she'd been living a double life right under my nose. So what did I do about it? I made sure she'd never forget what she did. And the best part? 2.5 years later, when she thought she had me all figured out, I showed up in a way that completely turned her world upside down. But I'll get to that. Let me take you back to the night when everything changed. My name's Ethan Cooper, and I spent 24 years married to a woman I truly believed was my forever person, Olivia Cooper. We first met back in the late 90s at Colorado State University. Both of us were fresh out of high school, chasing big dreams with stars in our eyes. Olivia had that kind of presence that could light up any room. It wasn't just her looks, though yeah, she was beautiful, it was her energy. She had this big laugh, a sharp sense of humor, and when she talked to you, it felt like you were the only one who mattered. Together, we built a pretty good life. Bought a home in Denver, raised 2 great kids, and faced all the ups and downs most couples deal with. And honestly, up until that night, I never had a single reason to doubt her. So when the invitation came in for our 30-year college reunion, I didn't think twice. We were going. But Olivia? She was beyond excited. Couldn't stop talking about it for months. She kept wondering who would show up, what everyone must look like now, and whether or not David Richards would be there. Yeah, that last name should have set off some alarms. On Thursday afternoon, we checked into a nice hotel in downtown Denver and started getting ready for the big night. The reunion was held at this fancy country club, big ballroom, decked out in decorations, a live band playing all the old-school hits from the 90s, and an open bar that was definitely getting some use. Walking in felt like stepping into a time machine. All these faces from the past, older now, sure, but still the same people I used to hang out with. There were hugs, laughs, lots of catching up. And then I saw him, David Richards. Now, if you knew David back in the day, you'd remember he was the guy who didn't know how to take a hint. He had it bad for Olivia all through college. Even when she and I were already together, he was still hanging around like some lovesick teenager. He was the type who thought money and charm could get him anything. And even after Olivia and I tied the knot, he'd still throw out these slick little comments whenever we bumped into him. Some things don't change. There he was, same smug smile, flashy watch, acting like he owned the place. Olivia Cooper. Wow, you haven't aged a day, he said, arms wide like he expected her to leap into them. I clenched my jaw as I watched her light up. She laughed just a little too hard and hugged him a little too tight. My stomach turned. I tried to brush it off. I told myself I trusted her. I grabbed a drink and focused on having a good time, reconnecting with old friends, sharing stories, enjoying the music. Meanwhile, Olivia was floating around the room like a social butterfly, full of energy and flashing that smile she was known for. But every time I glanced over, David wasn't far behind. At one point, I noticed him leaning in close, whispering something in her ear. She giggled. I told myself it was nothing, just catching up, old memories. Then she vanished. At first, I didn't think much of it. The place was huge, people coming and going. It was easy to get turned around. Maybe she stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. But 40 minutes passed, and I started getting this uneasy feeling. That's when Ryan Mitchell walked over to me. Now, Ryan isn't the kind of guy who stirs up drama. He's always been a straight-up, no-nonsense kind of dude. So when he looked uncomfortable, I knew something was off. He rubbed the back of his neck and let out a sigh. Ethan, I don't want to start anything, but I just saw Olivia and David sneak off together. Didn't look good, man. For a second, I just stood there, stunned. Tried to laugh it off. You sure? Maybe they just... He cut me off. I wouldn't have said anything if I wasn't sure. They went out the side door. My mouth went dry. I gave him a nod, tried to keep a straight face. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it. He gave me this long look, then patted my shoulder and walked away. I let out a slow breath and set my drink down. Suddenly, everything felt too loud, too crowded. I scanned the room, still no sign of Olivia. I checked my phone. No messages. That feeling in my gut? It kept growing. I took a breath and tried to stay calm. Maybe she'd walk back in and this whole thing would turn out to be nothing. But she didn't. And deep down, I already knew. Something was really wrong. The ride back to the hotel was dead silent. The kind of quiet that makes your ears buzz. Out the window, the streets of Denver were still alive with people and lights, but inside that car, it felt like the world had stopped. The streets outside were buzzing, bars overflowing with people, neon signs lighting up the sidewalks, engines rumbling at every red light. But inside the car, it was dead quiet. Just the soft whir of the AC and the occasional buzz from Olivia's phone as she sat there scrolling, acting like I wasn't even in the car with her. I kept my hands steady on the wheel, eyes fixed on the road, but my mind? My mind was racing. Ryan's voice echoed in my head. I don't want to start anything, but I saw Olivia and David sneaking off together. It didn't look good, man. I cleared my throat, trying to sound casual. So, where'd you run off to? She didn't even glance up from her screen. Just a lazy, huh? I looked over, catching her out of the corner of my eye. Ryan said he saw you leave with David. That got her attention. She locked her phone and let out this exaggerated sigh, like I'd just ruined her whole evening. Then she turned toward me with that annoyed look I'd seen a few too many times. Oh, please. We were just catching up. Are you seriously jealous right now? I gave a short laugh, flat and cold. Jealous? No. Suspicious? Yeah. She rolled her eyes and folded her arms like I was the crazy one. Ethan, don't be ridiculous. Then tell me what you two were doing. She shook her head, like she was trying to calm down a child. We were just talking. That's it. Talking about what? She shifted in her seat and stared out the window. Old times. College stuff. Life. You know, the usual. So why not just tell me where you were? Her jaw tightened. Because I knew you'd overreact. Just like you are right now. I bit down on my tongue and gripped the steering wheel a little harder. I knew if I said what I really wanted to, I'd regret it. So I just stayed quiet and turned onto Colfax Avenue, heading back toward our hotel. The roads were mostly clear. A couple cars pulling out of late-night diners and gas stations, but not much else. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling in my gut. I'd been with Olivia long enough to know when something was off. And this? This was way off. When we finally pulled into the hotel parking lot, she unbuckled her seatbelt before I even had the truck in park. I'm exhausted, she muttered, already halfway out the door. I'm going to bed. And just like that, she was gone, walking across the lot like she couldn't get away from me fast enough. I stayed behind in the truck for a moment, hands still wrapped around the wheel, just staring at the dash. Everything about the night felt wrong. And now she was acting like it never even happened. By the time I got up to the room, she was already in bed, changed into one of those big old t-shirts she liked to sleep in, curled up under the blankets, her back turned to me. She wasn't asleep. Not really. I could tell by the way her shoulders stayed just a little too still, like she was listening, waiting to see if I'd say something. I didn't. I just stood there in the doorway for a long second, letting the dim city light coming through the curtains wash over the room. Then I walked to my side of the bed, sat down, and ran my hands over my face. Ryan saw them leave together. And now here Olivia was, pretending none of it mattered. Like she could just sweep the whole night under the rug and move on. I laid back, staring up at the ceiling. The air conditioner hummed in the background, slow and steady, but my mind wouldn't stop. I kept seeing the way David looked at her, the way she laughed a little too much, the way she dodged every single question I asked. Something was wrong, and no matter how much I wanted to believe otherwise, I knew it. The next morning, you'd think nothing had happened at all. Olivia was up early, humming to herself as she brushed her hair in the mirror. She even gave me a little kiss on the cheek before heading into the bathroom like everything was normal. Like we were just two happy people on a weekend getaway. I sat on the edge of the bed, running my hands over my face, still stuck on the night before. On Ryan's voice. On Olivia's lies. And on the way she'd shut me down so quick when I asked about David. I knew my wife. I knew when she was hiding something. At breakfast, we found this little diner off Broadway Street. She barely looked at me, just sat there sipping her black coffee and scrolling through her phone. Every now and then she'd smirk at something on the screen, then glance out the window like I wasn't even there. Like I was invisible. That was it for me. The moment we got back to our house in Denver, I made a decision. I needed answers. Real ones. I needed proof. The very next day, I drove to this small, beat-up office in downtown Denver, wedged between a gun shop and a bail bonds place. That's where I met Jacob Hayes. Jacob was an ex-cop, around 52, with a graying beard and these sharp blue eyes that looked like they'd seen way too much in their time. His desk was a mess, papers everywhere, a dried-out coffee cup, and a stack of old case files held together by a stretched-out rubber band. He looked me up and down when I walked in. "Ethan Cooper?" I nodded and sat down across from him. "Yeah, I need to find out if my wife's cheating on me." Jacob leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. "Got a name. Olivia Cooper. And the guy? David Richards." He grabbed a legal pad and started scribbling down the names without saying another word. "You got a reason to believe something's going on?" I let out a breath through my nose and stared at the floor. "Call it a gut feeling." Jacob tapped the end of his pen against the desk. "Gut feelings are usually right. You want me to look into just recent stuff, or dig deeper?" I clenched my jaw. "I want everything." Jacob gave a quiet nod and flipped to a clean page in his notepad. He started firing off questions. Olivia's work hours, my travel schedule, where David had been seen lately, any detail that could help him connect the dots. I gave him everything I had. And before I even walked out of his office, he was already making calls. The next 5 weeks dragged like a slow-motion car crash. Olivia carried on like everything was fine. She kept texting late into the night, heading out with friends, smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. She even mentioned planning a weekend spa trip to Santa Barbara, like we were still that picture-perfect couple. I didn't say much. Kept my head down. Played dumb. She never noticed I'd stopped asking where she was going. She didn't pick up on how quiet I'd gotten. And she sure as hell didn't notice that I was tracking every little move, every late-night errand, every quick run to the store, every time she wore lipstick to grab milk. Then, one Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Jacob. His voice was calm, steady. But the words? They landed like a gut punch. "Ethan, I've got the results. You're going to want to come in for this." The second I stepped into his office, I knew. His face said everything. He didn't bother with small talk. Just pulled a manila folder from his desk, slid it across to me, and sat back in his chair. I opened it. The first thing I saw was a hotel receipt from 3 months ago. Room for 2. Olivia's name. David's name. The Ritz-Carlton in Los Angeles. My jaw clenched. I flipped to the next page. Another hotel. Different city. 5 months ago. Then another. And another. My chest got tight as I went through them. Dozens of receipts. Different places, different dates, going back 4 years. And then came the photographs. That's when something in me cracked. The first one, Olivia and David, walking into a hotel like it was nothing. Next one, David holding a hotel door open while Olivia stood beside him, glancing around like she knew what she was doing was wrong. Another one, Olivia walking out alone, hair messy, sunglasses on, David trailing a few steps behind. I gripped the edge of the desk so hard my knuckles turned white. Jacob leaned forward. His voice was low, but steady. "Your wife didn't just cheat at the reunion, Ethan. She's been meeting up with David several times a year for at least 4 years." I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry as sand. "Every time I was out of town?" Jacob nodded. "Every single time." I sat back, feeling the blood rush in my ears. It wasn't just receipts and pictures. Jacob slid one last document across the desk. Text messages. Recovered from the cloud. I didn't want to read them, but I did. "David, next week? Same place?" "Olivia, of course. I miss you." "David, how's Ethan? Still clueless?" "Olivia, always. He's gone on business. We'll have the whole weekend." I dropped the page like it burned my hand. My fingers were shaking. Jacob rubbed his jaw, watching me. "I'm sorry, man." I just nodded, trying to keep it together. This wasn't a slip-up. It wasn't one bad night. It was a pattern. And suddenly, all of it made sense. That evening, I pulled into our driveway just after 6:15 p.m. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight I thought it might snap off. The envelope sat in the passenger seat beside me like it weighed 100 pounds. Olivia's car was already in the garage. She was home, probably making dinner, probably pouring wine, probably smiling like her world was still intact. I sat there for a long minute, trying to breathe through the storm in my chest. Then I grabbed the envelope and walked inside. The smell of garlic and roasted chicken hit me first. Some soft acoustic song was playing from her phone on the counter. She stood at the stove, stirring a pot of mashed potatoes, a wine glass sitting half full beside her. She turned around when she heard me. Flashed that same warm smile. "Hey, you're home early," she said, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. "I thought you had that late meeting tonight?" I didn't answer. I just walked over to the kitchen island and dropped the envelope onto the marble counter with a quiet thump. It hit the counter with a sharp slap, loud enough to make Olivia blink. She frowned, confused. What's that? Open it. She hesitated. Ethan, what is this? Just open it, Olivia. She didn't move right away. Just stood there, eyes flicking between me and the envelope. But then, slowly, she reached for it, peeled it open. She pulled out the first photos, her and David at the Ritz-Carlton in Los Angeles. Her glancing over her shoulder while he held the door. Picture after picture of betrayal caught in daylight. I watched her face closely. First came the confusion, then recognition, and then something I didn't expect. Not guilt, not remorse, annoyance. She dropped the papers onto the counter and sighed like I was the one inconveniencing her. Are you serious right now? You tell me, I said, my voice low and flat. What am I looking at, Olivia? She crossed her arms and tilted her head, like I'd just accused her of stealing office pens. You went through my stuff? You hired someone to follow me. I blinked. That's what she was starting with? I reached into the envelope again and pulled out the receipts. Her name. David's name. Over and over again. Hotel after hotel. I slammed them down on the counter. Explain this. She shook her head and gave a dry little laugh. Ethan, this doesn't prove anything. David and I are just friends. Friends. I felt something flare in my chest, sharp and white-hot. Friends, I repeated, barely above a whisper. You meet your friends in hotel rooms? For 4 years? You really think I'm that stupid? She rolled her eyes. God, Ethan, you're overreacting. I can't believe you actually went behind my back and hired a private investigator. That's insane. What's insane, I said, stepping closer, is you still lying to my face when I've got all the proof in my hands. She huffed and grabbed her wine glass, taking a long sip like she needed it to handle me. Then she set it down and squared her shoulders. You know what, she said. Maybe if you paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have needed to talk to David. That hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at her, my ears ringing. Say that again, I said, my voice low, too calm. She didn't flinch, lifted her chin, and stared me down. You heard me. You've been so wrapped up in work and your little routines that I've felt invisible for years. So yeah, maybe I liked having someone who actually listened. I gripped the edge of the counter, trying to hold it in. My knuckles turned white. So this is my fault? She didn't answer, just stood there, silent. I shook my head slowly, forcing the anger down my throat like poison. Then I reached for one of the text messages. The one where David had written, "How's Ethan?" Still clueless. I held it up. Was I clueless, Olivia? She looked at the paper. Her jaw clenched, but she didn't look guilty. Just annoyed, like I'd ruined her evening. And that's when it hit me. She didn't regret any of it. Not the lies. Not the secrets. Not the years she spent sneaking around behind my back. The only thing she regretted was getting caught. That realization landed heavy in my chest, like the wind had been knocked out of me. I nodded slowly, exhaled through my nose. Got it. Then I turned and walked toward the hallway. Where are you going? She called out behind me. I didn't answer. I just kept walking, because if I stayed 1 second longer, I was going to say something I'd regret. And Olivia? She wasn't worth it. I stood in the hallway for a long minute, staring at the floor while my heart pounded in my chest. Every breath felt heavy. Every second dragged like an anchor tied to my ribs. Behind me, I could still hear her in the kitchen pacing, muttering, sipping her wine like I was the problem. She had lied for years, and she couldn't even fake remorse. That's when I knew I couldn't stay. Not another minute. I walked into the bedroom, stiff and robotic, pulled the old duffel bag from the closet, unzipped it, and started tossing in clothes. Shirts, jeans, socks. Didn't matter what. I wasn't thinking. I just needed to leave. The rage inside wasn't fire anymore. It had cooled into something worse. Finality. I came back down the hallway, bag slung over my shoulder, keys and wallet in hand. I passed the kitchen without looking at her. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her glance up from her phone. She looked confused at first. Then her eyes dropped to the bag on my shoulder. Her face went pale. What on earth are you doing? I didn't stop. Just kept moving toward the door. Ethan, she snapped, heels clicking behind me. Where do you think you're going? I reached for the doorknob, paused, turned to face her one last time. She stood just a few feet away, arms still crossed, but the mask was starting to slip. For the first time since this whole mess started, I saw it, real fear in her eyes. Not fear of losing me, fear of not being in control anymore. She thought I'd blow up, that I'd yell, argue, make a scene. She thought I'd stay, but I didn't. I just looked at her for a long, quiet moment, then said the last thing I'd ever say to her in that house. Somewhere you can't lie to me anymore. Then I opened the door and walked out. I tossed my duffel into the passenger seat of my truck, climbed in, and fired it up. The engine rumbled to life like it understood exactly how I felt. The house sat still behind me, porch lights casting a weak glow across the yard. For a moment, I half expected her to come running out, shouting, crying, begging me to stop. But she didn't. She stayed right there, watching me from the window, phone in hand, probably already texting Megan or one of her other friends, spinning the story about how I was overreacting. I pulled out of the driveway without looking back. Didn't go far. Just far enough to breathe. I found a small hotel off Spear Boulevard, downtown Denver. Checked in under a different name. The girl at the front desk gave me a second look, probably wondering why a tired man with a single bag looked like the world had just fallen in on him. I didn't explain. Didn't need to. I took the key, found my room, and locked the door behind me. The second I sat down on the edge of the bed, it all came crashing in. 24 years. Gone. The family we built. The future I thought we shared. All of it, gone. I rubbed a hand over my face and just sat there. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt hollow. But underneath the numbness, there was this cold, steady feeling. Relief. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew. The next morning, I did the only thing that made sense. I called a divorce lawyer. His name was Samuel Ford. Tall, silver hair, wore a navy suit like it was armor. His office was up in a high-rise downtown, with a wall of glass that looked out over the city. A place people went when they needed to walk away from everything. I sat across from him, laid the file on his desk. Photos, receipts, texts, everything. He flipped through the paperwork, didn't say much. After a minute, he set it down, looked at me over the top of his glasses. I take it reconciliation's not on the table? I let out a small, breathless laugh. Not even a little. He nodded. Good. That makes things easier. Then he grabbed a fresh page from his notebook. First things first, he said. Cut all contact with her. No calls, no texts, no social media. Let me and my team handle the rest. I nodded, jaw tight. Done. Second, he said, do you want to fight? Or are you looking for a clean break? I paused. Thought about dragging her through court. Thought about making her feel every ounce of what I'd felt. But that wasn't who I was. Not anymore. I don't care about revenge, I said. I just want her gone. Samuel gave me a look, like he'd heard every kind of answer over the years, and nodded. That's the right call. He reached for his pen. Let's get started. When I walked out of his office, I blocked her number. Deleted her from everything. Social media. Contacts. Email. No more yelling. No more fights. Just silence. Let her watch me vanish, one click at a time. A week passed. 7 long days. I didn't check my phone. Didn't go back to the house. Let my lawyer handle the mess while I tried to figure out what life looked like now. And I didn't regret leaving. Not once. But I did wonder when it would finally hit her. The reality. It happened on a Friday. I was in the hotel, coffee in hand, scrolling through apartment listings, trying to piece together what the next chapter might look like. Somewhere across town, Olivia was probably standing in our kitchen, still living like nothing had changed. Probably sipping her second cup of coffee. Probably wearing one of those silk robes she always splurged on. Still thinking she had time to fix this. Then came the knock at the door. 3 sharp, deliberate knocks. She wasn't expecting anyone. She walked through the house, past the wedding photos, past the counter where she used to laugh with David like I didn't exist, and opened the front door. A man stood there. Dark suit, sunglasses, businesslike. No smile. Around 42. All business. He held out an envelope. Olivia Cooper? She blinked. Yes. He extended the envelope. You've been served. She froze. Didn't move. Didn't speak. The man waited a few seconds, then let out a quiet sigh and set the envelope down on the small table beside the door. Have a good day, ma'am. That was it. No emotion. No second glance. He just turned and walked away, leaving the envelope sitting there like a landmine waiting to go off. When the door clicked shut, Olivia didn't move. She stood frozen in the entryway, staring down at that envelope like it might explode if she touched it. She thought I was coming home. She figured I just needed space, maybe a few days in a hotel to cool down. She probably imagined us sitting down over coffee, her saying just enough of the right things to glue the pieces back together. But she never expected this. Her hands were shaking as she tore it open. Dissolution of marriage. State of Colorado. The words blurred on the page as she flipped through them, hoping she had misunderstood, hoping this wasn't what it looked like. But there it was, clear as day. Her name, my name, the date of our marriage, the list of assets, the split, all of it. She dropped onto the couch, the papers spread across her lap like they'd been written in a language she didn't recognize. This wasn't just a fight. This was final. For the first time since I walked out, it hit her. This was real. Her hands fumbled for her phone. She pulled up my name and hit call. Call failed. She tried again. Call failed. That's when the panic crept in. She opened our text thread and typed so fast she nearly dropped the phone. Olivia, Ethan, we need to talk. Please call me. The message sent, but the little red notification didn't show up. She stared at the screen, waiting. Nothing. So she tried again. Olivia, Ethan, please, just talk to me. Still nothing. For the first time in 24 years, her words didn't reach me. For the first time, I wasn't there to read them. Her breathing grew sharp and uneven. She flipped through her contacts and called our son, Liam. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, Mom. Liam, she said quickly, straightening up. I need you to call your father. He's not answering me. There was a long silence on the other end. Mom, Liam said slowly. What did you expect? Her stomach dropped. What do you mean? He won't even talk to me. Yeah, Mom, he said, his voice quieter. Because he's divorcing you. She closed her eyes tight. Liam, please. You don't understand. I need to explain. Explain what? His voice was sharper now. That you lied to him for 4 years? That you ran around with some loser from college and thought Dad wouldn't find out? Her throat clenched. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Silence. Liam let out a long, tired breath. Look, Mom, I don't want to be in the middle of this. But Dad told me everything. And honestly, another pause. I don't blame him for leaving. Tears welled up in her eyes. Liam, don't do this. I need my family. I need. Then you should have thought about that before you betrayed him. Click. The line went dead. Olivia sat there, phone limp in her hand, staring at the papers like they might rewrite themselves if she waited long enough. She tried calling our daughter, Sophia. Straight to voicemail. She sent 4 more messages to me. Still nothing. That was the moment it all came crashing down. The moment she realized I wasn't coming back. I wasn't going to hear her excuses. I wasn't playing the fool anymore. I was gone. And there wasn't a damn thing she could do about it. The divorce was finalized on a scorching Thursday afternoon in a downtown Denver courtroom. I sat beside Samuel Ford, my lawyer, while the judge read through the final settlement. It all felt strangely distant, like I was watching someone else's life unravel from the outside. Olivia sat across from me, dressed in a navy pantsuit, hands folded neatly in her lap. She looked worn down, thinner, pale, but she still carried that same stiff posture, like part of her still believed I might change my mind. I didn't. Colorado's a community property state. That means everything we earned, everything we owned, got split right down the middle, no matter how many receipts I had. Infidelity doesn't matter here. Samuel warned me. I had evidence, hotel receipts, photos, texts, but none of it changed the numbers on those papers. I could have dragged her through court, could have fought tooth and nail for a bigger slice of what we built together. But truth was, I didn't care about the money. I just wanted to close the door and never open it again. In the end, Olivia got the house in Denver. The same house where we raised our kids, hosted birthdays, put up lights every Ryamas. But that house, it wasn't mine anymore. I had cleared out my things weeks before. The moment I shut that door behind me, it stopped being a home. It was just a structure for walls holding memories I didn't want anymore. A monument to betrayal. Sophia told me later that Olivia barely stayed there. It was too quiet, too empty. Like living inside an echo of what used to be. The finances were simple. We split the savings clean down the middle. I took my share, just over $500,000, and walked away without blinking. She probably thought I'd sit on that money, save it for the future we once talked about. A lake house somewhere in Grand Lake or Durango. Retire together, grow old. But that dream was long gone. Instead of holding on to money for a life that no longer existed, I used it to start a new one. I never told Olivia where I went, and she'd never find out. Liam and Sophia kept that to themselves. Out of everything, I think that's what cut her the deepest, not the money, not the silence, but the kids. At first, they tried not to pick sides. They loved their mom. But once they knew the full truth, everything changed. Liam was the first to say it. "Mom, you ruined our family." "Not Dad. You." Sophia wasn't as direct. She still called Olivia for a while. But eventually, the excuses started. Why she couldn't visit, why she didn't reply right away. Slowly, she pulled back. The day after the divorce was finalized, Olivia tried calling Liam, hoping to shift the blame. She said, "Your father abandoned me." Liam didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just said, "No, Mom. He left because you broke him." And just like that, she lost both of them. When the judge stamped the final approval on the divorce papers, Olivia just sat there, staring at the page like she was waiting for some twist ending. Maybe she thought I'd change my mind at the last second. But when I stood up and walked out without looking back, that's when it finally sank in. This wasn't a timeout. This wasn't revenge. This was forever. She had spent 4 years sneaking around behind my back. Now, I was the one who vanished. After the divorce, she tried everything, called my phone, still blocked, sent emails. I deleted them, begged the kids to talk to me. They wouldn't. And when it all fell apart, she ran to the only person she thought she had left, David. I wasn't there for it. But Liam told me later. She showed up at David's condo in Aurora, thinking he'd be happy, thinking now that she was finally free, they could be together. But as soon as she mentioned the divorce, he laughed. Right in her face. "Olivia," he said, "what did you think this was?" She had thrown everything away for him. And he didn't even care. He never wanted a relationship. He wanted the thrill, the sneaking around, the risk. And now that it was out in the open, it wasn't exciting anymore. He had already moved on, already seeing someone else. Years of deception, years of risking it all. And for what? Nothing. By the time the final papers showed up in the mail, I was long gone, settled into a condo in Durango, far away from the life I left behind. For the first time in decades, I was alone. But I wasn't lonely. I was free. She spent years thinking she was in control. But in the end, I was the one who walked away without looking back. It's been 2.5 years now since I last saw her. 2.5 years since I walked out of that house in Denver with nothing but a duffel bag and the truth. 2.5 years since I sat across from her in court, waiting for the gavel to fall. 2.5 years since I blocked her number, deleted every message, and moved on. Now I'm back in Denver, but not for her. I'm here for Liam's wedding. The venue is stunning, a private estate tucked into the Aurora foothills. Maple trees line the driveway, and the courtyard glows with string lights hanging like stars. I pull up in a black BMW rental, step out, and straighten my navy suit. At my side is Chloe Anderson, a woman I met in Italy while I was figuring out how to breathe again. She's not a rebound. She's not some revenge romance. She's just real. She gets me. Like me, she let go of a life that stopped serving her. She spent years traveling, meeting people, rebuilding. We're not married. We're not in a rush. But she makes me laugh again. Makes me feel understood. As we walked toward the courtyard, I could feel the stares. There were some familiar faces, relatives, old family friends, folks who still didn't quite know how to act around me after the divorce. Some nodded politely. Others just looked away. And then, I saw her. Olivia. She stood near the entrance, dressed in a dark green gown. Her blonde hair was styled the same way she used to wear it back when we were still us. But she wasn't the same woman I had married. She looked tired. Not physically, she still looked polished, like she'd spent hours getting ready, but there was something hollow in her eyes. The kind of tired that settles in when regret has been living inside you for too long. Her gaze landed on me and froze. Then she saw Chloe slide her hand into mine, and something in her cracked. Before I could even react, she was coming toward me fast, determined, her heels striking the stone courtyard with sharp clicks. She grabbed my wrist, yanking me to a stop. "We need to talk," she said, her voice high, frantic, loud enough to turn a few heads. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I just calmly pulled my arm free. "There's nothing to talk about, Olivia." Chloe took a step back. She knew this might happen. Knew Olivia would try one last time to claw back a little control. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. "Is she your girlfriend?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Are you going to marry her?" I looked her straight in the eyes. Calm. Steady. "That's none of your business." She blinked fast, trying to hold it together. "Ethan, please." Her voice rose again. No longer quiet. No longer composed. It edged toward panic. Her hands were shaking at her sides. I could feel the eyes on us now. Guests pretending not to watch. Others openly staring. And then, Before I could speak, Sophia stepped in. She had been standing with her brother near the entrance. The second she saw Olivia unraveling, she walked over, her stride strong and deliberate. She stopped between us, facing her mother head-on. And in the firmest voice I'd ever heard from my daughter, she said, "Mom, you made your choice. You betrayed Dad for years. You don't get to cry about it now. Either behave or leave." Silence. Olivia opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, like she needed to explain something. But there was nothing left to explain. She had already lost everything that mattered. I didn't wait for her to come up with something else to say. I gave her one last look. Then I turned and walked away, Chloe's hand in mine. And for the first time in years, I felt completely, undeniably free. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you were in my shoes, would you have handled things differently? Would you have left her with nothing after the divorce? If you like this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks for watching.